Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. My guest on this episode is Dave Mowry. Dave teaches stand-up to folks with a mental illness by finding humor in darkness to transform lives. He wrote the book OMG, That's Me, and as a comic, shatters stigma one joke at a time, sharing his own struggles to help others know they are not alone. I had an absolute blast chatting to Dave. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's do it. I'm a huge admirer of the craft of comedy and the fact that it embraces people and their flaws and their stories, and it's a real platform for anybody to just get on the mic. You know, this kind of willingness to step onto a stage where you might bomb publicly. I think there's a tremendous amount of growth that comes with that. And I've experienced that firsthand playing in rock bands through my youth, right?
Yeah.
Bombing publicly in rock bands or playing to the bar staff or getting heckled or my favorite heckle in a band was a guy on a bike. A guy rode past on his bike and heckled us from his bike. Would you say that in a way comedy saved you?
In a way, yeah. I was sad and lost, and had my 14 really dark days and lost years due to my mental health. And then I took a stand-up comedy class, and it changed everything. My difficult times, I'd hear a song on the radio and it would trigger my thoughts, and I'd go back to some bad experience I had. And after starting the stand-up comedy, I would go, I'd hear that song, but then I'd look for to find humor in it. So I'd get that trigger, and then I'd say, okay, where can I find the humor in that? Uh, it changed everything, from the anxiety, the PTSD from all the experiences I had. And they say the more challenges you have, the more material you have for jokes and for humor. And I found that to be very true. I've got lots of material.
That's so liberating. It's such a liberating kind of mind shift where there's a struggle or something, and you're like, wow, now I actually see this as having potential. I can relate to that too. Being in the midst of a challenge or a struggle, but going, hey, I can use this as material, and that's great because those struggles and challenges are always going to be there. What did some of those personal struggles look like for you in terms of the bipolar and the anxiety? I understand you were initially in the business world. Was that just, it just wasn't a good fit?
Well, it was a great fit, had success, loved it, and then lost it all because of my undiagnosed bipolar disorder. The depression was so deep, so dark, and I really couldn't do anything. And then when the mania came, those are the times when I did the things that I don't talk about. When I was depressed, I have regrets for the things I didn't do, and when I was manic, I have regrets for the things that I did do. And those were where my secrets are is when those manic times when I did stupid stuff. But those were some of my challenges. And then, uh, I love business, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't move. It was like mud, the darkness, the deep, deep darkness. And so I just, seriously, I just couldn't function at all. It was everything I could do to get out of bed. And I'd go sit on the couch, and I'd just do everything I could just to be. And I'm not a religious person, but I'd pray, and I'd just pray for peace of mind, because my mind was constantly going, always negative thoughts, and just on this loop. And this loop and the anxiety, this sense of dread was just so huge. All I wanted was peace of mind. And I had an experience. I don't know if you necessarily want to go there, but I was contemplating suicide. I went to a park and not far from here and sat at a picnic bench next to the river, and I had a gun on my lap, and I didn't do it. I'm still not 100% sure why I didn't, but it was my thoughts and everything was because I just wanted peace of mind.
So how do you turn a moment like that into humor?
When when things are really bad, were really bad, I decided to end it all. So I went into the bathroom and I took a bunch of pills. Afterwards, I called my wife for help. She said there are more pills under the sink. She was very helpful. That takes a minute, doesn't it?
It did take, yeah, but that's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. Um,
Yeah, that's a darkness, that's a hard time, and then
well,
that's where the comedy comes.
well, humor gets us through, doesn't it? Like what else if we don't have humor to get us
Yeah.
through this stuff? And I think obviously we've got to be careful, not to offend people, but I think in comedy, like anything's on the table, really. I think that's what people hope and expect from comedians, to really go to some uncomfortable places, but find that relief through the humor. Do you think do you think to be in stand-up comedy you need to be told that you're a funny person?
The people that think they're funny, well, that's an interesting thought. I've found the people that really think they're funny are the hardest ones. Yeah, I teach stand up to folks with mental illness, and the people that think they're funny are the hardest ones to teach. Um, I, I think what I do with the people that I teach, yeah, they need to be told. It helps to tell them that they're funny. Uh, but as we go through it, part of what I do is it's a little bit of individual therapy, and then it's a little bit of group therapy, and then it's finding the humor, and then it's crafting the jokes, and then it's timing, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a process, and when somebody gets it, when somebody's got it right, when somebody has the timing and they've crafted the joke and they get it out, yeah, to tell them that that was great. That's important. That's important. They need to hear that. Uh,
Like,
one of the things you said about, careful not to offend people. When we do shows or when I've done shows and I've told that suicide joke and many other, the people that laugh the most are the people that have been in those experiences or had a family member or whatever. We've only had one person in all the shows I've done. I've only had one person that's come up and said, that probably wasn't a good joke because somebody might be triggered. And that person was a professional, a chairperson, somebody in the business that took care of people, and so they weren't offended, but they were thinking somebody else might be. And they've never met that somebody else. Um, it's when I think the difference is telling my story one joke at a time versus making it about somebody else
mm,
or yeah, I think that's the key. But I, I don't, I don't try to not offend anybody. I think that
yeah,
takes the creativity away.
yeah, and you're not going to please everyone, right? No matter what you try and do, if you try and get into pleasing people, it's probably not a good way to go. I think it was I heard Jim Gaffigan say, I think he's got a number of brothers, and he said that he was probably like the third funniest brother at the dinner table. That his other two brothers were far funnier than he was, but he just got out there and was the only guy doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He probably learned a lot from his brothers.
Mm.
Helped him learn his craft, and then yeah, it's for me, who knew I'd get up on stage in front of a couple hundred people and tell like I said, tell my story one joke at a time. Who knew? But you just do it. and it's interesting. I don't get nervous. I was nervous the first few times, but since then I don't get nervous because it's just
I I
completely honest and open, and I like my jokes. I really like my
I
jokes. I'm not worried about other people liking them. I think they're great. So, and
I
people always laugh. I've never bombed, so I'm okay.
I find this fascinating, because when I was in the corporate industry working in the architecture world, like it was the creative aspect that appealed to me, and then it became very corporate. And I had massive amounts of anxiety in meetings, like I'd be sitting in a meeting and I'd literally want to be sick or run away. It was just so out of alignment with creative stuff and the kind of corporate side. And I ended up suffering kind of crippling anxiety, and I had to take a dramatic left turn, and ended up like leaving Australia to play drums in a rock band. But my point is exactly what you're saying. When I got on a stage and I was creatively expressing myself in a healthy way, there was no anxiety. There was nerves, but there was no anxiety. And I was like, why can't I sit in a room with like four business guys? And that's like unbearable for me. But I could go on a stage in front of a few hundred people and kind of express myself. So I just think it comes down to like the way we're built, what we're trying to say, and like you say, you just feel like this call it alignment with your jokes and what you're doing. So it's not really that, it's a different type of anxiety. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, for me, the anxiety was the worst because it was always there. The mania would come and go, and the depression would come and go, but the anxiety was just constant. And then, like you said, the fight or flight thing. Uh, when I was in an anxiety producing situation for me, which was most situations, I'd get a panic attack, and I'd start to sweat, and the sweat would just run down my face and soak my collar, soak my armpits and all that. And I'm sitting there thinking, I, I mean, again, I just got to get out of here. Um, Doing the being creative makes it just changes everything. It gives me peace of mind, it gives me calm, because I still have anxiety, but nowhere near what it used to be. And part of that is
Mm.
from the humor. I found humor in anxiety, and now when I think of getting an anxious situation or anxiety producing situation, I think of my jokes, or think of something funny, or try to craft a joke and come up with a punchline or set up, and I get over it.
I love observing the different types of comics. You've got storytellers, you've got traditional jokes, more, joke up premise, punchline
Yeah.
types. Do you try and get to sort of, because it's fair enough to say, oh, I want to do comedy, or in your classes and your coaching, do you get to the core of what type of a comic somebody might be? Like, can you see that they're more of an observational person, or they're more of a traditional joke teller? Does that kind of stand out to you?
It does, and everybody's a little different. Mostly, what I teach is the premise, the setup, and the punchline, uh, and in that can be the story. There can be the story, and then within that can be the setup and the punchline, of course. And some people, that's what works best for them. And really, that's what their story. It's dependent on their story, or which part of their story they're telling at one particular time, whether it's a longer story, and or whether it's just a quick setup and punchline. And one of the keys to comedy, I'm sure you know this, is use as few words as possible.
Mm,
You just there's a story about Jerry Seinfeld working for hours to get a joke from 6 words down to 5.
mm.
And that's so true. The fewer words you use, the better it is. So there's all sorts of those things, but somebody then can be up there and tell a story and keep people entertained and feel good about it, and then you have 3 setups and punchlines within that story. the thing we do though is we do it for the humor, for the laughter, for the inside ourselves and outside. Um, I see comics telling stories and uh, for applause instead of telling jokes or telling stories because they're funny.
Mm.
And I teach, and the people we do the funny. We find the funny, and we find it in our you know our darkest days and the hardest challenges.
Yeah. I don't know. I found once I was doing martial arts and it was quite confronting, and I was doing it with a very close and trusted partner and friend. But when we first started, we had to like face off against each other and just stand there and look at each other. We'd been friends for a long time, and we just started laughing. Like it was sort of the kind of nervousness or insecurity of it. We just started laughing, and our awesome sensei was just he sort of knew it was going to happen. So he was like, I'm just going to let you guys take as long as you need, because we just had to get this laughter out before we could sort of get to a more kind of earnest place. And I
Yeah,
imagine in the comedy, perhaps with beginners and so on, it's perhaps the same. There's kind of this initial laughter and nervousness, but you kind of need to get through that to be able to just deliver the message in a kind of concise way, as you say, with that economy of words and just like cutting to the point of it, and not sort of winking or winking the joke or laughing at your own, But I imagine you got to go through that, get all that out the way.
yeah, yeah. One of the most important things is liking your own jokes, and that's part of the craft of writing jokes and finding the material for jokes is you know having just enjoying our own sense of humor, and that's what we find, and that's what I help people find. And comedy transformed my life, and I see the same transformation happening with other people. They
Mm.
come in. Molly is an example, and I write about her in my second book. She was a doctor, and she had to give it up because of her bipolar disorder. She just couldn't couldn't practice medicine, and it was that's all she was. That's all she knew. That's all she ever wanted to be, was the doctor. And all of a sudden, she couldn't, and she was lost. And she came to the comedy class, and her mom, told me, she's suicidal. I'm really, really worried about her. And she came through the class. She was funny, and we helped her craft jokes. And at the end of the class, we did a show, and then she performs now regularly in clubs around Portland. And she's no longer a failed doctor or somebody who's lost everything. She's a comic. That's her
Mm.
identity. And that transformation was amazing to watch.
Yeah,
And her mom said, yeah,
what a left kind of turn.
oh yeah. And her mom
Yeah.
said it saved her life. And I usually don't talk about that because it sounds, overly dramatic. I've seen that, and for Molly, it was actually the case.
Do you think comedy has to come from a place of pain? Like if somebody's had it all together their entire life and they just sort of, do you think there's much material there?
No, I think you gotta have some pain. I mean, there are people who can do it without the pain, but oftentimes they're the folks you see on YouTube who are telling jokes about their wife or their kids. Not to uh, say anything about Jim Gaffigan, he's great, but I think, yeah, you got to be in go from that hard time and that dark place to really get to something that touches people. And the thing about comedy is you tell your story, and you build up the suspense, or you're going one direction, and then for the punchline, you go a completely other direction. It's a surprise, and that's what
Mm.
releases the energy in the audience and makes them laugh. Is that surprise, that unexpected twist? Like with the suicide joke. Um, where the hell is he going with this? And then and then there's the
I
punchline.
I heard somebody say it yesterday. I think I can't remember where, but it was almost like with babies and stuff when you play the peekaboo game and they
Yeah,
just consistently love it. I think it's that element of surprise, right? It's sort of
it
like
is.
you're they just consistently like it's sort of this you're one step ahead of them thing, or they're one step ahead of you. And is that
Yeah,
like a fair reference?
that is a fair reference. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, I love it in a stand up act when it just takes a complete turn, or there's that surprise surprise moment. So you've written a few books, one of which is OMG, that's me. How was that writing process for you? And it must have been awesome to have that so well received.
Yeah, it's the writing. Yeah, yeah, I wrote for bphope.com blog, and really my experience is 600 words at a time, and it was cathartic. It held so much in. But when I wrote, completely open, completely honest, and just to get it out, and then have people respond. And the name of the book came from is the most common response to my blog post was, "OMG, that's me. You're telling my story. I don't feel so alone now." And the posts have been read by over 1 million people and lots of comments, and that's essentially that's what they say. Almost all the comments, they say it in different ways, in different words, but that's what they're saying. For me to get that out and to put it out there completely open and honest, it was healing, because you talk about imposter syndrome. I had pretended for so long. I pretended I was okay. God, I wasn't okay, but I pretended I was okay. I'd see somebody that I knew and they'd say, "How you doing?" And it would be during my dark days and last years, and I'd say, "Well, I'm, semi-retired, or taking, whatever it was, just, you know, just I couldn't talk about it, so I just pretended to be somebody else, and to get out of that by writing and telling the story, really being open and honest with myself was really healing, helpful, and maybe that was the beginning of my. I look back at there were different places, different points, but that may have been the beginning of my healing, because that came ahead of the humor. And the book is, yeah, it was sold about 20,000 copies, and it's a self-published book. So usually when you self-publish, you sell 50 copies to a few friends and family, and that's it. And so it's been really well received, and it's helped. I mean, I hear people, it just helps people know that they're not alone. They don't have to suffer in silence, that other people are going through it, and that helps. So that's really the point of it.
Well,
And it's working.
I'll give you the OMG that's B from what you've said as well, because at that time I mentioned earlier, I was popular, well liked, career seemingly on track. Behind closed doors, dread, anxiety, struggling to get out of bed, but on the surface, everything was fine. And it's just like I just realized people can only take things on first face
I don't
value,
know if you
really.
can hear me, but you
Oh,
froze.
oh
There
yeah.
we go. You're back.
Oh yeah, we're
Okay.
back. Um, yeah, I
So
think
you
yeah,
you were talking.
but behind closed doors, same deal, ominous dread and anxiety, and but out in the world, well liked, popular. And I just realized that people can only take things on face value. So if you're presenting this version of yourself that's kind of tip top, people respond to that. But then if you actually lean into that discomfort of being honest, um, it's so much more powerful in a way, because you realize that people are going through the same shit. Like it's exactly as it sounds like you've done. And also no small feat having self-published, to have that really resonate. I self-published and it sunk to the bottom of an Amazon ocean, and there's a few
Yeah.
copies under the bed, and but that's okay. It was an important part of the process. But for you to have that engagement is a proof that, going to that honest place really works.
I see other people, fellow travelers, you talk about your experiences, and uh, I see other people, and I can see it in the eyes. Uh, so when somebody is talking and not being completely who they are, whatever, I can see it in their eyes, and people
Mm.
could see it. I knew people could see it in my eyes. I knew they could look into my eyes and see into my soul and know that I was, you know,
That's true.
miserable.
Yeah, I say the face value thing, but actually we have a bullshit radar, which is an unspoken thing. So I think actually, if you're putting on that, people are like, there's something not quite. In my case, that was definitely the case. People were like, there's something not quite right here, like sort of like confusion, like the eyes kind of. So
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah,
There's an unspoken thing.
yeah, yeah. And I would hope that I never saw that person. I mean, it just, yeah, because you pretend, and yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I didn't want to keep pretending, but I didn't want to, if I told my story, as some people with mental health challenges, it's everything that's going on in their head, and it's so much part of their life, and they jump in, and that's, they overshare, they talk, and pretty soon they scare people away, or people just kind of drift away, and don't want to talk to them. So it's important to say what's what, but at the same time not to overshare and scare people away or push people away. They don't want to hear about the surgery you had 3 months ago in great detail and have you talk about that for 15 minutes. And the same thing about mental illness. People with mental illness tend to blurt it out and want to get it out. And so it's there's a time and a place
mm,
and a way to do it. And I write about that in the book too.
mm. No, it's a very fair point. It's a tricky balance between getting to the point and not like spewing everything out there. It's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge to listeners or practice. Particularly for somebody struggling, is there something? I mean, already from what we've discussed, particularly in the comedy world, is there a challenge you have for the audience?
I think next time something takes you back to a dark day, or if you're going to an event or somewhere, or you're going to have something that's hard to do, anxiety, or if you're laying in bed and you're having a real hard time getting out of bed to go somewhere or do something, think about exactly the easiest one is, okay, I'm so depressed that obviously the obvious answer is I'm so depressed that I can't get out of bed. And so go someplace else, take and come up with three different crazy, absolutely ridiculous things. I'm so crazy. I peed myself. I can't get out of bed, and so whatever, just crazy stuff. And you find you get out of your head and into the humor, and it's so healing. Um, I've got a joke about depression. When for a long time, I'd go into my cycles, and I just would get surprised that it just happened. But now I know, I can tell when I'm depressed and when I'm manic, because when I'm depressed, everything I can do to get out of bed. When I'm manic, I spend all my time trying to get my wife into bed.
Dichotomy.
Yeah, yeah. And with mania, you get the hypersexuality.
Yeah, yeah.
You get pretty, it's kind of everything. So
I love that challenge. Like it's cliche, but it's the old life's too serious to be taken seriously, right? So if you're in those depths, like just try and take the weight of that out of it a little bit for a moment, just by, like you say, reframing the situation or try. Yeah, it's a
it's
good
going to
one.
get you out of your head, at least for a few minutes. And who knows, maybe you're going to come up with a really good joke.
Mm.
For me, sometimes I'll come up with a punchline first, and then I've got a great punchline, and I've got to find a setup for it.
So you work
And
backwards.
I work backwards sometimes, and your jokes will come to my mind, and I'm constantly editing. I've got one. You've got happy hours where you're at, and Handley, they do happy hours, I'm sure, at the pubs. And on my way to work the other day, I was driving in. I passed a bar, and outside they had a big sign that said "Happy Hour." And I think that's being discriminatory. I think there should also be a crappy hour for depressed people, and bipolar people could go to both.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, the
I've got
dichotomy.
Yeah, I've got, after teaching and after I've got dozens of, I've forgot more jokes than,
So so in that one, did the crappy hour come first, and then you set up the premise?
oh, what, yeah, it was, yeah, I don't know on that one, but I do know that it was, I think that's being discriminatory. I think there should be an unhappy hour for depressed people. And that unhappy just kind of, too many syllables. And it was 3 syllables, and it was just too much. And so coming then to crappy hour, it tightened it up and really said it better. And so yeah, it was unhappy hour for a long time. Uh, and
That's
then
re-
it
that's
became crappy
really
hour.
that's really trimming the fat off it. I know you've the common economy of words, but that's really taking it like from unhappy to crappy. Yeah, the syllable going down to a syllable
Yeah,
level. That's cool.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that editing's going on ahead, and that constant thing. But I've got
Um,
jokes that I'm working on that, we'll see where they end up. But I've got great punchlines and no setups, and I think great setups and the punchlines.
yeah, yeah. I know nothing about the scene in Portland. Is it a good comedy scene there? Like, what's the scene like?
Small, lots of open mics. There's some clubs. A big one's Helium Comedy Club, and they've got clubs across the country. So we got a Helium Comedy Club. And when we performed there with my troupe, there was 8 of us that did a show that we sold out. That we had 185 people, and so that was really cool. Otherwise, there's open mics, but Portland is interesting. It's people are easy quick to take offense.
Mm.
So sometimes you go to a club or do an open mic, and people are sitting there with their arms crossed thinking, okay, if it me, you know, or make me laugh.
Mm.
And that's encouraging the jokes anyway.
It,
And it's almost better. It's interesting when I first started, I'd see that one person out in the audience that had their arm crossed, they weren't laughing, and I'd try to get them to laugh, and I
mm.
kind of focus on that. And over time, I just ignore them, and you know,
Yeah, they're
I,
just maybe not at the right show.
yeah, exactly. They're and maybe no show is right for them. So
Yeah,
I just
they've
don't worry about it.
they're a basketball fan and they've gone to a football match, something like that.
You go, yeah, yeah.
To go full circle a little bit, that's what's so brave and courageous about it is, when you're facing a room that literally for that first few seconds or whatever it might be, are like, you need to make me laugh. I've paid or I'm here for you to make me laugh. Like that's a tremendous amount of pressure, pressure, and it can
Yeah,
go any which way.
it can go any which way, and that's where liking your jokes come in. If I write jokes for other people, then I would myself that I think are funny, and I'm not trying to write for people. Then I don't feel any pressure.
Mm.
If people again, I like my jokes, so if people laugh at them, that's great, and if they don't, that's okay too. But I have a good time doing them.
Yeah,
And
cool.
yes, if nobody laughs, it's tough to get through it,
Mm.
but, but I don't worry about it afterwards. That just it just was, and that's why I don't worry.
The awesome thing I remember about bands as well was just hanging out with other bands out the back. I just loved that sort of, we're all here tonight, we're all putting on a show, anything can happen. And there was sort of this camaraderie. Wasn't like that so much in London. It was quite competitive, but in Australia, it was, we're sort of all in this together. Let's see what happens.
It's a lot more competitive,
Mm. Uh,
and people are uh, other comics are oftentimes they're hoping you bomb
mm,
because that'll make their set easier.
yeah.
And so it's interesting. We can talk and we can whatever, but it's there's a competitive nature that, and I don't worry about it. I don't. Again, I like the jokes and it's good and people laugh. I've had enough experience, but other people, they don't want you to do well.
Stick to the game plan.
Yeah, yeah. So there's funny people. Every comic has a bad night. The anxiety or whatever it is going on makes it hard. I know when I'm, in that depression. My depression now is doesn't go as deep and doesn't last as long. I'm getting good medical care, and the mania doesn't go so high and it doesn't last so long. But if I'm depressed, and I go perform, it's really hard to get up there.
Mm,
It's just really hard to get up. But once I get up there, and when folks get depressed, or at least for me, my muscles in my face go slack and my voice goes monotone. Uh, and I talk quietly. So when I'm feeling depressed or down and I get up, I talk as loud as I can. And when it sounds to me like I'm yelling, it's just right.
mm,
And when I'm loud and I'm doing that, then my mannerisms and um, again get out of my head and just go through it.
mm.
And then afterwards, God, I got through it.
Yeah,
But the show must go on. It doesn't matter how depressed I am. If I've got a show at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, uh, I got to be there.
Mm, be present.
Got to be
Uh,
there. Yeah.
where can people find you in the book?
Amazon. Actually, the book and OMG, That's Me 3 is a story of six comics who took the comedy class and the transformation that happened to them. And so there's OMG, That's Me if you want to really know what it's like to live with a mental illness, uh, or if you live with a mental illness and want to know, OMG, That's Me is the right book. People buy it and give it to family members, or they give it to other people, or they buy it because they've got somebody they know. And lots of comments are, I finally understand what my daughter's going through, or my, you know, husband's going through. OMG, That's Me is the transformation of the six people that learn comedy. And it just came out on audiobook. And what's cool about the audiobook is that we've been able to splice in live
Uh,
performances. So like Molly's chapter 6. And so Molly, we're reading about Molly or hearing him, it's audiobook. So the story, the narrator is talking about Molly, and then it cuts to Molly being on stage and telling a joke and the audience laughing, and it's really special. So, but Amazon, Audible, everywhere. The books are available everywhere, and I appreciate you asking. I don't. I'm terrible at promoting the books. I'm just awful at it. I because it's like I do it for the wrong reasons. It's like promoting it to for sales, and
mm,
that's the wrong reason for me.
mm.
I can talk about it for people to get it or listen and read or listen, and that's great. But if I'm doing it to promote sales and make money, I can't do it. I've never been able to promote. I've never promoted the book. There's 20,000 copies. I've never had an ad. I've never had just never nothing. It's just kind of happened organically.
That's inspiring to hear because I have the same issue. I don't have a lot of interest in the pushing the kind of sales aspect, but I understand like how do you get it out there? But I have that exact same struggle. So it's very inspiring to hear that it has organically done that's possible. That's quite reassuring.
And I can see that in you. You're sincere, you're honest, you're not pretending, you're being you. Um, if you try to sell or be something uh, other than that, it doesn't work. So, you know, but I
Yeah.
appreciate you and, being uh, real and honest and open and being sincere and curious. That's great. I, I really appreciate that. Um,
Likewise. Likewise.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you want to hear any more jokes.
I would love
I don't know if
to.
we have. I don't know if we. Have, I know. This. It's funny we talk about mental illness and all my experiences, and it gets sad and it gets depressing and it gets boring. And I got to throw some humor in. And it just got to. So um, I think there should be a dating service for people with mental illness. I'm cutting out the premises here. I'm just going straight to the set because we don't need it. But
That's funny in
uh,
itself.
yeah, yeah, it is, and that's what you can do with the joke. I can elongate it, or I can shorten it. I can do a 20-minute set or an hour. I can do whatever. It just depends on. But I think there should be a dating service for people with mental illness. I can see the postings now. Paranoid white male seeks paranoid white female to share compound in Idaho. Uh, or paranoid female seeks male with no government connections. Or my favorite, dual personality female seeks dual personality male for double dates.
Love
I
them.
really like that.
Love them.
That's such a simple. I know it's such a clean, simple
It is the double
thing.
dates.
Yeah, I know. Double dates, isn't that great?
Does it makes a quadruple date, doesn't it? A dual, and a
I
dual.
don't, depend if there's two of you, yeah, it would be a quadruple date. So yeah, there you go. I wonder who drives. There's another punchline. It's set up in a punchline. We could craft a joke right here.
That
So
can go. Yeah, it can roll on. It can roll on, and then
yeah, it
what?
could
Then
roll
what?
on.
Then what happens when the double date gets to the restaurant and they
That's
need
right.
four chairs?
Yeah, table for two. Yeah, can I help you too? No, yeah, table for four, please. Or you go by yourself and you want a table for two, or I don't know. Yeah, you can go on and
I
on.
love it. I love it.
And
Keep going.
that's where the crafting the joke and the fused words and all that kind of stuff and the syllables, and that's where it comes in. So you can get it tight and you can nail it and do it. You mentioned anxiety, and and anxiety was the worst for me. Like I said, the mania would come and go, and the depression would come and go, but the anxiety was constant. And one of the way it manifested itself was I'd go into a restroom, like at a sporting event. I'd go in the restroom, and there were other people in there, and I just couldn't go. I just couldn't go. And I'd stand there and pretend or whatever, and I'd have to leave, and I'd go outside and I'd wait for whether it be till it was empty, whether it be a few minutes or half an hour, whatever it took. And then my wife and I went to a movie last week. And after the movie, I went into the bathroom and I went to the urinal and went. And it was at that moment that I realized how far I'd come. And I stepped back from the urinal and went, yes, yes, yes. And the other people in the urinal or in the bathroom looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no, not anymore. So the first half of that, but almost all that's true. So
Mm.
um,
It was a moment of celebration.
I know, and that didn't happen, but hey, that's the joke, that's the creative part.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
people say, well, and it's sometimes in the class, people, be coming up with a joke and a punchline, and people say, but that's not true. That's the quickest buzzkill you can get.
Mm.
And it sometimes, a couple times, it's been for that person that got to work through it. No, it's not true. That's the whole idea of the punchline is it's not true. It's a surprise. It's pretend. It's creative, but it's not true.
But it's still drawn from a truthful place, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
everything I do, everything comes is based in truth,
Yeah.
and, and that's yeah,
That
things that I
that's
can't talk about. I talk
yeah.
about. I write a joke, and work.
Well, those jokes are gifts. Thank you for those. I appreciate it. Appreciate it today. Yeah, as a storyteller, I'm just trying to get to the truth of things as well. As long as we're trying to get whatever it may be, as long as we're trying to get to the truth of the matter in whatever form that is, whether it's comedic or dramatic or, what's the truth of this, and also just in these conversations, what's the truth of things, as opposed to like asking kind of leading questions, or it's like let's just try and get to the truth of stuff. I think that's a great place to come from.
Yeah. So music, you talk, music when you write a song, uh, you know, I mean, good music comes from a place of truth and honesty, and you can do all sorts of different things with it, but it comes from inside, it comes from the heart, it comes from your gut, and that's the best music.
Mm. Again, sometimes I see somebody performing, all right, and it's sort of almost like, you can ride a bike and just you could the pedals will just go round, but you're not actually pushing, the pedals are going round. It's kind of a weird analogy, but I think when you're trying to get to a more truthful place, you're actually pushing, and that's kind of you can see that difference, whether somebody's just turning the wheels over or whether they're actually like grinding. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if you're writing a song and because you want it to be a hit, you're trying to write a hit song. It's odds are that's not going to happen. But it's the one you write from your gut, from your heart, or start somewhere and that you feel inside. That's the one that's going to do it. And maybe that's the surprise. You
Mm.
never knew that was going to be the one. But music is an art and creativity. I have great respect for people that write and perform. If you were still performing, I'd love to come to one of your shows. And
Yeah, no, it's not music anymore. It was drumming. Drumming's how I ended up in Europe.
oh, drumming, yeah,
Yeah, I was
yeah,
a
yeah,
drummer, and I went on
yeah,
this wild, wild ride that took me to London. And I did shows as a drummer for 2 years. But then from that, I ended up in Germany with a family, which is so much more rewarding.
yeah.
And but as soon as I moved to Germany for when my son was born here, I started pursuing acting and film. So I've had a crazy experience here as an Australian actor in Germany. There's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of comedy in it.
Hmm.
Especially those early days, going into German auditions and trying to do auditions in German as an Australian. It was just like mind-blowingly falling flat on my face. So now I'm very much focused on like how can I pull this into my own hands. So a lot of collaborating, short films, a lot of writing. Yeah, all under the storytelling banner, but always up for it as long as we're trying to say something. What are we trying to say here? And
Yeah.
whatever I can bring to a story or whatever it may be, as long as we're trying to say something, that's cool.
We talked about the anxiety, and when I was 20, I worried about what other people were thinking about me. And at 40, I stopped worrying about what people were thinking about me. And at 60, I realized people weren't thinking about me at all.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the natural progression there.
yeah, that is. That is. I got another joke for your son to make
Please,
him laugh.
please.
I don't, hopefully it'll work. You know the difference between a United States squirrel and a German squirrel?
This will be good. This is a good one. Please tell me.
The accent.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.